Okay, I I want this to be an observation and not a judgment, but it comes in the form of a question. Do you spend more time thinking about the threats and problems and difficulties here and now, or about heaven? Well, duh. The answer is how can you not spend a lot of time thinking about the problems and challenges and difficulties of the here and now? We are in the here and now. But I think a lot of us Christians, we get so preoccupied, maybe is the right word, with the here and now that we don't think about the there and then enough. Excuse me. I have so many favorite things in the Bible, but one of my very favorite things is in the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation. And in verse 21, I should tell you why I'm going to be talking today about heaven, the then and there, is because Paul says that training for godliness has value for all things in all ways, both for now and for this life and for the life to come. So I want to talk about the life to come. This begins a lot of reading here, but let it just do the best you can to absorb it. Okay. Revelation 21, beginning in verse 1. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." My gosh. When I just think about he will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. The older I get, obviously, the older one gets, the more meaningful that all becomes. When you're young, you're going to cry, you're going to have disappointments, you're going to have struggles. But this whole thing about no more death or mourning or crying or pain, when you're young, you don't, I'm just thinking about me as a, 25, 26-year-old guy. I knew I was going to die, and I knew people died. But I kind of felt bulletproof. I didn't think about my own death, and I was at the age, and my family, extended family, was of the age that death never came really very close to my own life and experience. And you rarely had, well, put it this way, I rarely had the kind of pain, physical pain, that I have feels like all the time now. That's just life. But the older I have become, the more beautiful these verses have become to me. He goes on, John, and he describes what heaven is going to be like and what Jesus will be like and what we will be like as the church. It's pretty cool. He talks about heaven, and he says, this is in verse 11. Actually, he's talking about the New Jerusalem, which I kind of take to be heaven. Anyway, it shone with the glory of God, and its brilliant. This is in verse 11. It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. I'm not a gemologist, but I think what John is groping for words to describe and the indescribable. A jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, and 3 on the west. The wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The angel who talked with me had a measuring rod of gold. We're going to come back to some significance of that. A measuring rod of gold to measure the city, its gates, and its walls. The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide. He measured the city with the rod and found it to be 12,000 stadia in length and as wide and high as it is long. Now, 12,000 stadia is about 1,400 miles. Thinking in terms of what does that look like? Well, for me, here in Edmond, Oklahoma, that's about how far it is from here to Orlando, Florida. So it's 2 pretty long days of driving or a airplane ride. But anyway, that's how high and wide and deep. We've got this cube of 1,400 miles in dimension. The angel measured the wall using human measurements, and it was 144 cubits thick. Now, 144 cubits is about 200 feet. That is no small thing. I mean, 200 feet? Just short of a block. That's how thick the walls are. All right. The wall was made of jasper, and the city of pure gold, as pure as glass. That's interesting. Well, let's move on. The foundations of the city walls were decorated with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth ruby, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th turquoise, the 11th jacinth, and the 12th amethyst. I think that's where we get birthstones, right? 12 months, 12 stones. Okay. The 12 gates were 12 pearls. Now imagine this. 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. Now, I had the awesome gift from God that we got to go to Jerusalem a couple of years ago, and what exists now as the gates into the old city they're not the same as they were in John's day, but because in 70 AD Jerusalem was pretty much leveled, but those gates are not short. I mean, they're big. A pearl of that size. Wow. The great street of the city was of gold, as pure as transparent glass. One of my favorite creative thinkers was a guy named Joseph Bailey. He wrote this little book, It's like a coffee table book, and it's almost a poem without meter or rhyme, but it so beautifully meditates on heaven. And one of the things he writes is, think about this. What, from the beginning of time mainly, from the beginning of humanity, one of the one of the things that was the mark of true wealth was also the stimulus, the catalyst for more wars. It was coveted, and I just think it's gold. It's the gold standard. You even now I hear it on the radio that stocks and bonds, they're unsafe, but gold, put your money in gold. In heaven, we walk on it. One of the things I see in this is Jesus, God, inverts our normal value system. There's that old perversion of the golden rule, which says the one with the most gold rules. Jesus turns that on its head. Gold, we pave the streets with it. In verse 22, he goes on, I did not see a temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. The nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth bring their splendor into it. On no day will its gates ever be shut, for there will be no night there. Now, you have to think first century to get a little bit of the significance of that. On no day will its gates ever be shut. In ancient times, in times of antiquity, the cities had gates because they had walls of protection around the city. The gates were shut and bolted at night, at sundown, and the reason is it was the greatest protection against potential invaders. And here, well, one of the other things is when the gates are shut, activity ceases within the city. I mean, that's the signal. Okay, the day's over. Shut her down. It also means that no merchants can come in or go out. It's no big deal to us. I don't know of a city in America that has gates. Might have some toll booths, but we don't have gates. Well, for a first century person reading this in about 90 or 91 AD, this was a powerful picture. Why won't it need to ever close the gates? Because there's no night. The glory and honor of the nations will be brought into it. Nothing impure will ever enter it, nor will anyone who does what is shameful or deceitful, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Chapter 22, I go on. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and the Lamb down the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be any curse. The throne of God and the Lamb will be in the city, and his servants will serve him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. There will be no more night. They will not need a lamp the light of a lamp or the light of the sun, for the Lord God will give them light, and they will reign forever and ever. Wow. Don't forget, that's home. Wherever you are right now, it's not home. It's temporary. It's a temporary stop along the way to our real home. Godliness has great value for this life and for the life to come. Hope I get to see you next time on Soap Care with Stevie Boy.